Thanks for calling Discover. This is Gabby.
Hey, Gabby. It's Jennifer Coolidge. Hi. I'm so glad I reached you at 2 a.m.
Oh, of course. Anyone with a Discover card can call and talk to a real person 24/7. Now, how can I help?
Yeah, I used my Discover card to buy these yellow pleather pajamas, and I'm just not sure I'm pulling them off.
24/7 U.S.-based customer service. It pays to Discover. Limitations apply. Learn more at discover.com/creditcard.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 34 of the Get Authentic with Marques show. I'm your host, Marques Ogden, and today we're going to be joined by Lynda Katz Wilner, a successful speaker, entrepreneur, very influential person. Before we do that, I want to thank two of our newest amazing sponsors, Ace Realty Group, owned by my good friend Lee Hamill, a realtor brand in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, and a must-win financial literacy. My good friend Ryan Shatner helps people understand the importance of financial literacy across sports and other platforms. Now, let's bring to the stage Lynda Katz Wilner. Lynda, how you doing today?
I'm great, Marques. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Before we get started, Lynda, on your amazing story, I always ask every guest the same question. What does the word authentic/authenticity mean to them?
And Marques, I'm so glad you asked me that question because it's not such an easy answer. But to me, authenticity is knowing and accepting who you are with no apologies, no excuses. And when somebody says Marques Ogden or Lynda Katz Wilner, they have a consistent image in their mind if you are indeed authentic.
Lynda, I have a question for you, a little bit of a spin-off question. Why are so many people afraid to be their real self? We've asked a lot of people that question. We've heard all types of answers from society pressures to wanting to look a certain way, to wanting to be a certain way, and want to portray a certain image and lifestyle or keep up, et cetera, et cetera. What is it that you really feel is why people don't want to be their authentic, real self?
Okay. And that's a great question because that's why many people come to me. And I think the biggest reason is people are concerned about being judged. We all think about that. Like, what does somebody think of us? And so perhaps if you are coming across as your authentic self, maybe you won't like me. Maybe you won't think I'm professional enough. There may be so many narratives that I'm creating that may not be true, but I may not have the confidence to come across as authentic.
Very well said. So Lynda, tell me a little about what you do, your business, you're a little bit maybe back before that, education, how you got into business, maybe you had some time in corporate America. Share with us a little bit more about who is Lynda Katz Wilner at her core.
Okay. At the core, and now I'll be very authentic, I'm originally from Long Island, and I used to have a very strong Long Island accent. So in that way, perhaps I'm not being authentic because I modified that accent. But I started out by going to the University of Maryland, and I studied speech pathology. But what amazed me was as soon as people met me and they heard me open my mouth and start to talk, they said, "Oh, you're from New York. Please say chocolate and coffee." And I realized how much I was being stereotyped just by where I was from and how I sounded. I then went on to get my master's degree in speech pathology at the University of Michigan. And when I was there and I was working with patients who had language problems, I found that my accent was actually interfering with their understanding. So if I said to them, point to the square, and they didn't follow the direction, is it that they had a language problem or that I had an accent that was different in that part of the country? And I was actually asking them to point to the square. And so I started to become very sensitive to the impact of dialect and communication. But when I went into the field of speech pathology, I chose to work with adults and children, but I focused on adult neurological problems and rehabilitation. And it was my passion for working with people and helping them where they lost their ability to communicate effectively. I loved to be in the position to help them and help their families literally find their voice again and speak. And so for many years, I worked with clinical problems as a speech and language pathologist. But then I started moving on to working with professional speakers, people or professional singers who had trouble with their speaking voice. And I started to pick up on more of the work with dialect and accent. And so then I moved into, because I worked in healthcare, working with foreign-born physicians who are excellent in their language skills, but the way they speak, they weren't understood. So that's evolved to working on what I call accent modification. And my goal is not to eradicate and change people's authenticity, because we all have different cultures, but to help people communicate in a way that they're understood the first time. And so I've worked with doctors and nurses, and I've worked with international priests who are maybe from India, but working in the United States, and you don't understand them. So I started working with foreign accent. And then some of the companies said to me, well, what about the American-born speakers? Can you help them? And so that's when I started working more with public speaking and executive presence and helping people speak, sound, and look like leaders or the professionals that they want to be or be perceived as.
Wow. Audience, as normal. Let's get real. Lynda, I never thought about somebody being judged or looked at in a certain way and or light because of their accent or their tone or how they speak or how they say something. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Is that very common in the world? Do people hear a certain tone or certain accent? Wow, you're from the deep South. I don't want to talk to you. Wow, you're from up north, from Boston or New York, and I don't want to work with you. I mean, for me being from Washington, D.C., I didn't grow up with an accent. I mean, I literally was in the nation's capital, and it's just who I am is who I am. So wherever I go, people don't really know where I am from. I don't sound like I'm down south. I don't sound like I'm up north. I'm just a Washington, D.C. guy. But tell our audience how people can be discriminated against or treated unfairly because of their accent, where they're from.
And some of it, you say treated unfairly, it could be some bias that people don't realize they have. But the way that when they're listening to somebody. So I don't know if you remember the movie My Cousin Vinny.
Of course.
Okay. So think about that scene. He was in the courtroom. He sounded like he was, I don't remember if it was the Bronx or Brooklyn, had this heavy accent, and he stood out as a sore thumb because he was down south. And actually, when I was at one of my reunions from high school, one of the people there was an attorney. And I knew his voice very well. And I pick up voices, of course, and I can hear them and remember them. And he had a Southern accent, which he never had living on Long Island. And I said, what happened? Why did you change? And he said, I'm an attorney and I live in Alabama. If I had that New York accent, people might not trust me. Wow. So depending on your career, now, if you had a French accent and you came to the United States and you chose to be a maitre d' at a restaurant, that would add to your credibility.
Sure.
But if you are speaking with a heavy accent and you are speaking at a board meeting and people in the room don't understand you, then it's a problem. So we can keep remnants of our accents as long as they're not a distraction. I worked with somebody who had a very mild German accent, and she wanted to work with me. And I said, why? I understand you perfectly well. And she said, yes, but every time I speak up at a meeting, people ask where I'm from or start to talk about my background. And I want to talk about my business. And so if we perceive it as something that's interfering, as I did, because it was constantly talking about my accent, not about what I was saying, if that's holding us back or becoming a distraction, that's when we might want to change it.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Lynda, let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk to people about, you're a speaker. You talked about, your background, speaking on stages, breakouts and things of that nature. You don't really do a lot of, she'll do that on occasion. We do more of the breakouts, the instructional. Mm-hmm. Talk to our audience a little bit about that. What type of things do you speak on? Of course, I know you talk about, speech, communication. Do you do anything around leadership? Do you do anything around team setting? Talk a bit more about that and then the type of work you do in your breakout sessions as a speaker that is trying to educate and enlighten and impact your audience. Mm-hmm.
Well, what I do, I mentioned earlier, I help people speak, sound, and look like a leader. So let me break that down a little bit. I very often speak about the 3 V's. The verbal, what you say, the words you choose, which could be everything from your grammar to your word choice and your vocabulary. That's the verbal. I work with the vocal, how you sound, and that's going to be how fast do you talk? How is your pronunciation? Accent may come into that. Do you speak in a monotone voice and put people to sleep? Or are you so perky that it's annoying for somebody to listen to you because it doesn't sound authentic to the situation? Do we have the uptalk when we're speaking and we sound maybe unsure of ourselves because of the way we're speaking? Those are all vocal aspects. And then, of course, there's the visual aspect, how we look, how we carry ourselves, not just what we wear, but when we walk into that room, do we command the presence that we feel that we deserve? And so that's a big topic I speak about a lot, the balancing that visual, vocal, and verbal, because we all need that for leadership, for people, aspiring leaders, people who are moving up in their organization. They're always coming to me because they want to polish their professional presence. And Marques, to be perfectly honest with you, accent modification or dialect is embedded in that. But I feel I don't like to come across and say, I can help you with your accent. That's very judgmental. And in this day and age, we're not comfortable telling people that. Mm-hmm. So I focus on how to come across visually, vocally, and verbally. Another topic I speak about is the OLE approach to communication, standing for to have good communication, you need to observe the person, you need to listen to them, and then you can engage. And so that OLE approach is helping people with their listening skills. And I find there's a big demand for that, especially in leadership, because the best leaders, as you know, are good listeners. And so those are 2 main topics. But I'll tell you a fun topic that I'm starting to add into my repertoire. And because I know you're from the sports world, and I would say an aspiring golfer or an emerging golfer, but I know I'm experienced as a communicator, but I also want to play golf. And I have found unbelievable parallels. And you'll see this in any type of sport, but especially in golf, parallels between what you need to master to be a good public speaker and to be a good golfer. So I'm starting a new series of Tee Up Your Speech to go through the 30 different parallels that I have found between public speaking and golf and many other sports as well.
Audience, again, let's get real. I am a big believer in visual and how you say something and how does it come across, like your tonality, the way in which you're, upright. Are you confident? Are you, someone that has, like you said, are you a good listener that's listening to understand, not listening just to respond? And I love how Lynda said, helps with that visual, with the verbal, all the things she's talking about, because in reality, ladies and gentlemen, if you can't communicate, you are not going to be able to get what you want, right? It is so imperative if you don't open your mouth with words or with phrases that actually make sense, and you're not just taking up hot air, then people aren't going to understand you. They're not going to engage you. And what's happening is you're not going to leave an impact. I have a question for you, Lynda. I remember I did a speaking job for Equitable. At the time, it was AXA Equitable, which is one of the largest, is the largest insurance company in the world based out of Paris, France. Spoke for them in New York City at the JW Marriott right across from Central Park. And it was great. And, I did pretty well. I could have done better. It was still a little early in my career, but since then I've evolved and I got some great feedback from their global meeting plan. I love to see what your thoughts are on these three things to make an excellent speaker. She said, number one is your stage presence. Number two is your ability to engage the audience. And number three, your ability to educate the audience. From your perspective, Lynda, what would you say about the three things that lady from Equitable told me were absolutely imperative to be a top dollar, top-notch speaker? And then if you agree, why?
I completely agree. And Marques, you said that was several years ago. I think that advice is even more important now, because if you're not an engaging speaker, people are going to walk away or tune out. We no longer listen to keynotes where somebody is just talking for the entire period. You have to pull an audience in. You have to grab their attention at hello. And I often do that. I teach public speaking masterclasses, and I often say to them, you need to grab their attention immediately. We have such a short attention span, and I think it's become shorter and shorter over the years. And with all the virtual meetings we've had, we need to just captivate somebody's attention immediately and keep engaging them. We can't talk at them. They will tune us out. So what you said about about engaging is important. The interacting is important. When you walk onto that stage, that's that visual. We judge somebody the minute they walk on the stage or walk in a room. And hopefully it is in alignment with who we want to be and we're authentic. But I've seen many a time, and I'm sure you've experienced this, where sometimes you speak with somebody on the phone, you know what they sound like, you know they have good information. And when you meet them in person, they're not aligned. There's a disconnect. And so we're not sure who the authentic person is. Is it the person who looks very insecure or less polished? Or is it the person who that's showing up right in front of us? So we don't know who somebody is unless we see a consistent visual, vocal, verbal. And that's the presence that you see on the stage. We want to own the room. And that was excellent advice that you had. And I'm sure you see it holds true in all the situations that you're in.
Absolutely. And let me ask you an additional question. Of the three, stage presence, engaging your audience, and or educating your audience, what would you say is your ranking order of most important down? How would you rank those three? Because a lot of people that are listening, I feel, want to get into keynote speaking or public speaking or do workshops, things of that nature. And they're trying to figure out what are some good action steps to take to make that objective an accomplishment and or a reality. So how would you number those three in your order of most importance and why?
Okay. And that is certainly a difficult challenge. I think you need to know your message that you're going to educate. If you don't know it, you're going to ramble. So knowing your message to me is number one when you prepare what you're doing. But I think that the number one is your stage presence, because you set the tone the minute you walk up there. And when you walk up there and you command the presence, people want to listen. The other part you said, so it's the stage presence, it's the message, and the engaging has to come along with it. But I think I might even put engaging as number three. You have your stage presence, you show up so they know they want to listen to you. You have a great message because you have to captivate them in the beginning and lead to that message or hit them with that message. And then throughout your talk, you have to continue to be engaging in order to keep the attention. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And here's the great thing. There is no right and or wrong answer because everybody has their thought process. Everybody has what works for them. Mm-hmm. And I feel as long as you bring all three as a speaker, then you're doing a great job. And I think it's important that you understand how to get all that rolling in that regard, because if you can get that rolling, you can then start to grow your business. So I have one more question. I'm going to ask you where people can get in touch with you. Somebody that's listening, a budding, new, or maybe a early stage entrepreneur that's in the speaking business and they're struggling like I was in 2013, 14, 15. Got my first paid job 2016. It took me 2.5 years, Lynda, to get my first paid speaking job. What would Lynda Katz Wilner tell them or say to them to help them? What's one thing they need to do to start getting their speaking and or their budding or maybe stagnant business on track to get where they want to go?
Okay. There are two main things that I would say. One is you have to become a good speaker. So you should have coaching to help you with that. The other is you need to how to run a speaking business. And I think that there are many resources out there. I happen to be a member of the National Speakers Association and a member of the DC chapter of the National Speakers Association. And there's constant education. We get speakers coming in to teach you how to market your business, how to use social media, they don't teach you how to give a talk as much as how to run a business. So I think you need to learn that. You can't just say, and which many people do, I want to be a speaker, find me. We have to learn ways to get ourselves out there so that people do find us. We can't be passive. That's easy. We all tend to do that to a degree. We hope. It's like hopes and wishes that they'll find us, but we have to get out there and have people find us, but fine-tune our skills so we know how to do it. And then we know how to deliver a good speech so that they not only bring us in one time, but they bring us back.
Fantastic. Audience, phenomenal interview with Lynda Katz Wilner. Tons of information on how to have stage presence, the visual, the vocal, the verbal, how to come across with confidence, how to come across in a way in which people can understand you and can process what you're saying. All types of great information. Lynda, before I leave my authentic tip, how can people get in touch with you, to connect with you, to find out more about you and or your services?
Sure. I have a website, successfully-speaking.com. That would be the easiest way. I'm also on LinkedIn. I have a Facebook page, Success Speaking, and an Instagram, Lynda Wilner. Just remember, it's Lynda, Lynda. But the easiest way is going to be just through my website. You can even set up calls with me that are complimentary 15-minute calls if you have any questions.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, the authentic tip of this great interview. If you want to be found, if you want to conduct and get and obtain business, you have to market. You must market. If you don't market, people don't know you will exist. If they don't know you exist, they can never, ever buy your products and or your services. So again, take Lynda's advice and get out there and market. Turn your objectives into accomplishments. I don't care if you have a speaking business, a coaching business, if you run a restaurant, a franchise, it doesn't matter. Like Lynda said, whatever business that you have, in order to turn your objectives into accomplishments, go out there and market and sell yourself. If you don't sell yourself, the answer will always be no. So again, ladies and gentlemen, this is episode number 34 of the Get Authentic with Marques show. I'm your host, Marques Ogden, joined by Lynda Katz Wilner. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you have a great day.
Thanks for calling Discover. This is Gabby.
Hey, Gabby. It's Jennifer Coolidge. Hi. I'm so glad I reached you at 2 a.m.
Oh, of course. Anyone with a Discover card can call and talk to a real person 24/7. Now, how can I help?
Yeah, I used my Discover card to buy these yellow pleather pajamas, and I'm just not sure I'm pulling them off.
24/7 U.S.-based customer service. It pays to Discover. Limitations apply. Learn more at discover.com/creditcard.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.